Hey guys, today on the episode, I spoke to Michaela Robertson. She is a registered nurse by degree, as she says herself, but also a founder of Michaela Robertson Coaching and Strides for Strength. Michaela talked about her journey of being a new grad right on the cusp of COVID and feeling very burnout and overwhelmed in the beginning of her nursing career, and how that led her to become a coach to help other nurses and other people that are going through that same burnout and disillusion with their career to get excited about where they are again and create an environment that actually invites them to wake up every morning and head to work with excitement. I know for myself that using AI, for example, at my work helps me just open up more time to be spent with my family or outside and a little less time in front of the computer. I use Imagine AI for my editing, and I am going to link here on the episode for you guys so you can get 1,500 images edited for free by Imagine AI if you want to give it a try. Michaela also highlighted the significance of physical wellness through running and positive impact on mental and professional health. And really, her mission is to shift that narrative around people that are burnout and empower them to create careers that they love. Even though Michaela is in the healthcare industry, a lot of the concepts that we talked about today can be applied to any and all of us. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Accidental CEO podcast, where we bridge the gap between the creativity you love and the CEO mindset you need. I'm your host, Nada Salvatore, wedding photographer and business educator. Find full show notes and resources at accidentalceopod.com. Let's get into today's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Accidental CEO podcast. I'm your host, Nada Salvatore, and today I have Michaela Robertson with me. She is a registered nurse, also founder of Michaela Robertson Coaching, and she's a run coach and co-founder of Strides for Strength. So welcome.
Thank you. I love the title of your podcast because it's like so in alignment with my story. Like entrepreneurship was never part of the plan. And then now it's like, here we are.
Here we are, both of us. Yes. So tell us just a little bit about where you're located and what services do you offer? What do you do? And then we're going to backtrack a little bit into your full story.
Yeah, for sure. So like you said, I am a registered nurse by degree. And I say that because I also wear a lot of different hats, but I'm currently based in Denver, Colorado. I am a Midwest Iowa native. In terms of coaching, I love coaching nurses around career development and self-mastery, really just figuring out what it is that makes you tick and how you can do more of it. In addition to that, I am also a run coach, and I always say it's about running, it's not about running at all. I fell in love with running in college, and it's truly just been like the foundation of everything that I've done. So while I help a lot of athletes achieve their goals on the run, 5Ks, 10Ks, halves, fulls, there's so many life parallels that you learn too. And I feel like even as an entrepreneur and a podcast host, I'm like, if I could record a podcast while I was running, it would be so good.
Yeah. Get in the zone, right?
Yeah, there's just like so many downloads and like you're just so in tune with the moment in your body. So yeah, I wear a lot of hats, but I love everything that I do. And it's fun to see how they all like coexist together.
Perfect. So we'll dive a little bit today into being like multi-passionate and all of that. But why don't we start with, how you transitioned from being a new grad nurse right on the cusp of the pandemic to founding your coaching business and then going into Stride to Strength. So tell us a little bit more about that story.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's fun to unpack, but it's also like a little bit traumatizing because I became a new grad nurse. I graduated nursing school in December of 2019. And so when I started my new grad nurse job, I had moved 1,000 miles away from home in the middle of a pandemic, or right before the pandemic started. I didn't know that was coming. And so I really had nobody around, and I had moved for a transition program that I thought was going to help support me in that first year of nursing. insert pandemic. There was no support. Everybody was just trying to survive. And it was nursing as I knew it. People are like, oh, how did you navigate it? It's like, I didn't know anything different, but I saw very quickly just how broken the system was, and the lack of support, and the lack of resources, and the lack of autonomy in nurses, and them being self-led and taking care of themselves. And while I come from a place of compassion, because I understand there was extra strain, the times were tough, it kind of just became like a standard. And I love, it's not the quote, like, just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. And during those first 2 years of nursing, I saw a lot of nurses writing things off as common, gaining weight, low energy, burnout, leaving your job, just feelings of deep resentment and disconnect from their practice. And it was like, this isn't how it has to be. And so I started my own journey of career development and figuring out where I fit in the nursing world. But I remember that first year of nursing, I was like, this is not what I signed up for. I am not interested in this. It was just like very much that sick care model, not really teaching patients how to build habits or take care of themselves or change their lifestyle. So I then transitioned into travel nursing because I was like, well, surely if I'm making a lot of money, it's going to fix all of these problems underlying of this disconnect. And lo and behold, I did my first 13-week assignment, and I was the most burnout I had ever been. I was just feeling like my job was so transactional. I remember just saying, I feel like a pill slinger, like I'm not actually creating change. And so that's where it started. And since then, I've, shifted my own practice. I actually still currently work at the bedside, which surprises a lot of people. And I love what I do there, which is in the hospital setting for those who aren't familiar. And in addition to that, I teach nurses how to support themselves and build the foundation of themselves so they can have a career in life that they're obsessed with, because it's not this or that, it's this and so that's kind of the long-winded way of how I got to where I'm at today.
Very good. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
So your approach to career development, especially for, those feeling burnout, really centers around designing a career that aligns with your passion and purpose. How do you help your clients kind of navigate through this process and kind of find their passion if they're outside of that initial career?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's multi levels here. I think the first part is like building the foundation of yourself and figuring out like how well are you taking care of yourself and laying those habits of, movement, nutrition, mindfulness. And then once you have that energy to then go explore, because what I see with a lot of nurses is they are just so burnt out and disconnected. They're like, Mick, I don't have energy to go, discover those passions or those purposes. So after that, really starting to look at things or moments when you're engaged. It could be at work, outside of work, at the grocery store, in your day-to-day, where you're just really lit up. Like you feel so present in that moment and you're like, oh, I love this. And also taking note of, what are people coming to you often and asking help for? What are they noticing in you that you might not notice in yourself that you're really good at? And then once you're able to identify those skills or those moments, asking yourself, how can I do more of these? Because what I see a lot of people do is they think that if they just jump ship on the job, then they're going to find the fulfillment. But it's like that external change doesn't truly change that internal misalignment. So that's why the first piece of like coming home to yourself and getting connected with yourself is so important.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So let's dive just a little bit more into the comment that you just made of like just jumping ship on that job will not necessarily, help you find it. You talked about just exploring a little bit more of the things that you like and trying to figure it out what people come ask you for help. Did you find some of those in your path?
Yeah, for sure. For me, I am somebody who I really love patient education and, teaching patients about lifestyle changes that are not medication related. And so for me, I was, asking myself, how can I spend time to slow down and even just make those 5-minute more meaningful interactions with patients? Also, I learned that I love helping people transition into new grad life. So I started precepting on my unit. I do a lot of the new grad orientation, onboarding, new hires. I love showing nurses how to build habits in a sustainable way. So I run the unit-based wellness initiative on my unit. So it's like all of these things that I started to learn that I liked. I was just asking myself, how can I do more of them? And what I think a lot of people, especially maybe somebody who's listening, they're like, they they discount the idea because it's not already being done. And so you have to go and ask to create what you don't already see like happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you'd be amazed of how many, if you're working for a good company, how much people are willing to create these new environments and new jobs and new responsibilities that will, at the end of the day, end up helping more people. Yeah, helping more people stay connected, stay motivated, stay excited, and stay healthy. So always ask
Yeah,
for
no,
sure.
for sure. And it's so funny because like we're currently on week 6 of the wellness challenge on my unit, and so many people, and I had like reached out to like collabs to send prizes for raffle giveaways. And so like there's a lot of really cool stuff happening in this 6 week challenge. People are like, well, like, how did you do it? I'm like, I just asked. Like I asked if I could run it on my unit, and then I asked the people, in my network, like, hey, would you be willing to send some protein shakes, or would you be willing to send some element, or would you be willing to send some yoga passes, or whatever. And so I think it's just like you'd be amazed at how many people will say yes if you ask.
It's a great point. So, with your podcast, Built to Be You, you kind of carved a niche focus on self care for caregivers, a topic that, you know, it's probably not very well covered out there. What inspired you to start the podcast, and what impact do you hope that has on the listeners?
I call it my quarantine baby because I started it like in September of 2021. So I was still in my first year of nursing, and I was searching for podcasts like, how do I navigate burnout? Like, how do I deal with compassion fatigue? Like all of these feelings that I was feeling, but I didn't really yet have the tools to help me navigate those. And all the podcasts that I found that were out there for healthcare workers or nurses were really like tangible hard skills, how to start an IV, medication administration. And there was nothing about like how to care for the human who was caring for the other humans. And so that was what really inspired me, was to share my journey in transition as a new grad nurse while I was trying to find myself. And the whole mission of Built to Be You is you showing up as a fully expressed version of yourself, no matter where you're at or what room you're in or what title you're holding, and really learning how to come home to yourself and really just take up space. And I think nursing, and really any job where you're underneath of somebody else, we tend to lose a lot of self-expression and creativity and dreams and desires because we get just so stuck in the mundane structured day to day, especially with like nursing. There's so many policies and procedures. And so the Built to Be You mission is just, yeah, to help you be the fully expressed version of yourself. So that's where it started.
Very good. I like that too. You're not trying to like pull people away from that career necessarily. You're just helping them thrive within the career that they chose to begin with, which is really nice.
Yeah, and that's so funny. When I first started coaching nurses, I was at like a networking event, and they're like, wait, like, don't do that. We need nurses in the hospital. And I was like, I know we need nurses in the hospital. Like, my job is not to pull nurses out of the hospital. It's to help them, like you said, thrive in their current position. And if a transition or a pivot is in alignment later on down the road, of course I'm going to encourage that. But it's tough because there is a nursing shortage, but it's like you don't want a nurse taking care of you who's burnt out and miserable either.
I came from a healthcare background too, and I always talked about how we have a very serious case of the blind leading the blind.
Yeah.
The blind leading the blind on, in healthcare, because we are telling people to take care of themselves when we're not taking care of ourselves. So, nurses, like many professionals, very often face that societal and internal pressure to stick to their career choice. That's what they set out to do. That's what maybe their passion is. How do you address that fear and stigma, associated with career transition, if that comes down to that's what is needed for that person to kind of feel excited and motivated again?
Yeah, this is honestly, it's a tough question. And I remember when I made the decision to transition from travel nursing to then part time nursing and building my own business, there were a lot of people who were like, are you sure? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're making really good money. It looks good on paper. And a lot of times things do look good on paper. They check mark all of the boxes. But again, it's that internal misalignment. If you know that it sucks your soul and you know that it doesn't feel good, at the expense of what when you're staying in that position? And, I don't take career transitions lightly either, because I do think that they need to be well thought out and structured and have a little bit of rhyme or reason to them, because you're not just going to jump and hope that a net appears. Like, that's not my relationship with risk. At least some people can do that. But I think it's just asking yourself, like, if you were to stay in this position or in this career in order to please everybody else, what are you really missing out on? And I think that for me was kind of like a kick in the pants to go and create what I wanted and to, make the career that I wanted. And I think a lot of times it's hard to be what you can't see. And I think it starts in the education system where they show us bedside nursing, bedside nursing, bedside nursing. So really exposing yourself to other nurses or career development people who are, look like the direction you're headed or that you're even a little bit curious about. And I think that curiosity in career development can be huge, because you don't have to just jump ship. You can, dabble in it a little bit. You can try it on for size. You can go shadow. You can get a part-time job, like, just to see what it's like. So I think that there's a risk factor with it, but also at the expense of what?
Tell us a little bit more about just the process of working with people and helping them with their burnout to stay within their profession. What does that look like when you work with people?
Yeah, it's dependent person to person, because everybody comes to me in a little bit different season of life. But I always joke that the thing that people come to me to work on is not usually the thing that we start with. A lot of times it's like, Michaela, I think I want to leave my job. How do I find a new job? And then it's like, okay, well, let's sit down and talk about your other areas of your life. How is your physical health? How is your mental health? How is your spiritual health? And then we kind of dig into those things. But when it comes to, navigating burnout, it requires boundaries. And I think a lot of people lack boundaries and have a skewed perception of what boundaries are. A lot of times we think boundaries are like gates to keep everybody else out or things out, but really it's to keep in what you need to support yourself, your energy, your time, your finances, your habits, your routines, whatever that might be. What I see is a lot of people are, picking up extra shifts. They're not taking their breaks at work. They're not fueling themselves throughout their shifts. They're not sleeping between shifts. They're not going out and playing and having fun on their days off. So it really starts with, again, building that foundation of self, and that has a ripple effect into your career. And I think too, I fully know and acknowledge that there are cultures that we are never going to change. And I think that can be really challenging in nursing as you're trying to steward and change yourself and you're trying to carry that ripple effect into your place of work. Sometimes that external demand or that external environment is toxic, and it's like you can't, as much as you try, you're not going to change it. And so that's when we start to have the conversation of like, okay, how do we get you in a different environment? And that's definitely like not lost on me. And I think a lot of times nurses are like, but I'm part of a toxic culture. And it's like, I get that. So like, what are we going to do to change it instead of just complaining about it,
What do you feel is the most common thing that causes burnout in healthcare workers?
I would say the lack of awareness in the impact that the work has on ourselves and our nervous systems. I think, we are taught what happens at work stays at work. And like that is so far from the truth, because you carry it home with you in your nervous system, which then impacts your sleep, which then impacts your relationships, which then impacts, your nutrition and the way that you eat and your appetite and all of these different things. So I think it's a lack of awareness of the depth of the impact of even just one shift has, and then the lack of tools to help support that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
And I also think too, it is like shift work, rotating days and nights, or working only nights. Like that's such an irregular schedule, and that that compound effect over time definitely catches up with people. Workplace environments. How is the culture that you're a part of? How is the management support? I think it's very different across the board depending on what kind of environment you're in.
So you mentioned that your mainstream of income doesn't have to be your mainstream of purpose. And I think that's a very cool concept. So especially in the early stages of building your business, that can be very important. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how you balance these aspects in your own journey and what advice you give to your clients?
And I think, like you just said, it's like so important, especially in like the early stages of building a business, because you require like the financial part of it, but also like the energetic part of it. And I feel like that was something that I had a really hard time with when I was making the transition out of nursing. I thought that I was only going to work like 1 or 2 shifts a week and then build a business. And I was like, oh, wait, I need money to build a business and to like invest back into myself. So like this, like the math isn't really math and this doesn't work because I also have bills to pay. And so your mainstream of income doesn't have to be your mainstream of purpose. And I think this is so important, especially in transition seasons when you're making that pivot from your full-time job to entrepreneurship. And again, like for me, it's like assessing that relationship with risk. I realized in like the first 3 weeks of leaving my full-time job that I was not okay not knowing where my next paycheck was coming from. And then so I accepted a part-time job. I get full-time benefits, which is like the golden ticket. It's
Right?
so nice. And also, that is my mainstream of income. But my mainstream of purpose lies in coaching and Strides for Strength and the podcast and working with the nurses. And so that safety net for me was so, so incredibly important in order to free up the energetic capacity to pour into growing what I'm growing now.
Yeah, I definitely understand the whole process, and it's okay. I tell people all the time when I'm coaching them too, it's 100% okay if you need to have another job in the meantime while you're building your business, the career that you want to have later. You have that backup, have that secure paycheck. There's no shame in that. You don't have to go starve yourself to build your business. Just be smart about it. Make sure that you save in the money to invest in your business and you're actually making good use of the time you're spending away from your business making that money. So, that's time to make connections. That's time to learn skills that you can be learning in your business, that you've been using in your business. So there's a lot of different things you can do with the time that you spend on that safety net job. That is no shame on keeping while you're building your business. Today's episode is sponsored by Accidental CEO. Are you tired of empty calendars or worse, feeling like your revenue is capped? I've been there. The truth is, it's insanely frustrating to feel like you're doing everything the experts recommend but never seeing real results for yourself. Stop trying to follow someone else's path. Your business superpowers are completely unique from every other entrepreneur in your area. Let me help you find the key to unlock your wildly profitable business strategy. I focus on one-on-one business and mindset coaching because I truly believe you deserve individualized strategies for your unique business. It's time to get your business thriving. Check out my website for more information at accidentalceo.co. That's accidentalceo.co.
For sure. And I think for me, like it was like really like assessing my relationship with insert air quotes failure at that beginning. Like when I made that decision to accept that part-time job, I was like, that means that I'm not making it. It means that I'm not enough. And I think it's just like I wasn't putting myself in enough environments of entrepreneurs who were early on in their journey, who were like in a similar situation. I only saw people who were making 6 figures and had no full-time job and they didn't require a second income. So I think too, it's like being mindful of what you consume or who you're comparing yourself to. And that was really, really helpful for me. And I think too, it's like removing the arbitrary timeline. Like who said that you have to, leave your full-time job in X amount of time or whatever. And like I said, I just really quickly learned my relationship with risk.
Very cool. So, as a career coach, kind of focusing on that self mastery for the nurses, what are some of the common challenges that you observe amongst your clients? And how do you work with them into kind of overcoming those hurdles?
Yeah, one big one that I see a lot is like, how do I put this in word? Like lack of dreaming for, I guess this is what we'll say. Like they just don't allow themselves to think outside of the box of what they're already doing. And it's like what I'm currently doing is the only option. And what I see her doing or the other nurse doing is also the only option. So I think just that like engaging in that wild curiosity of what could be. Core values and core skill sets are two exercises that I really like to take my clients through because it helps us identify like what's really important to you and where are you living out of alignment with that. And just because you say it's important to you, like, is it actually important to you? And what does that look like in practice? And then the core skill sets piece is identifying those moments or those tasks where you're really engaged and then asking yourself, how can I do more of those? And then going out and creating the opportunities or seeking out the jobs that are in alignment with that. And I think sometimes we think, this is what I see with a lot of travel nurses. I've been working with a lot of travel nurses right now who are trying to leave travel nursing, but they're really stuck in the golden handcuffs of like the finances part of it. And so it's like, okay, if money is really important to you, that's fine. But how can we, make that, like, a lot of times what I see is I'll have them go plug all the numbers into a spreadsheet, and how much they think they need to make is like not actually how much they need to make. And it's just like a matter of like changing your spending habits. So I think it's unpacking what, like, if you say a core value of yours is money, what does that actually mean to you? And what does that look like in your day to day? So yeah, I think that is where a lot of nurses or people that I work with in career development is just closing themselves off because they don't yet see themselves in that role.
I can see that. Can you give us an example that come to mind of someone that you have helped through that process?
Yeah, there was a new grad nurse that I had worked with actually, and she started in the ICU because that was where she did her capstone. And so it was just like an easy transition. It was like her capstone person was like, hey, do you want to come work here? She's like, yeah, bet. I'm a new grad. I have a job. This is great. And then she was like 6 months into that job and she was so miserable, like just dealing with a lot of like verbal and physical abuse from patients, not like a lack of support and resources from management. And it was this question of like, okay, if you stay in this role for another 6 months, like, where do you see yourself? And it was that honest truth of like, I'm going to leave the profession. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. And then so we kind of removed all of the rules that they were placed on ourselves during nursing school. Like, we've got to get into like an entry level position and stay there for a year before we can transition. And it ended up being that, when she was a kid, when she was younger, she really liked working with kids and babysitting. And she was like, I think I want to do peds, but I'm not sure. And then so we did a workshop on like how to go and shadow in a new position that was peds related. And so now she's in the peds ICU in the NICU and she loves it. Like, she is thriving. Her routines are so much better. Her habits are so much better. So I think it's just one of those examples where you don't have to stay in a job because you signed a year contract. Like, there's ways out of it.
Leave.
Yeah.
Please
Leave,
leave.
please. And also, can we quit making people sign contracts, especially new nurses?
Yes, absolutely. So with the strides for strength, you also emphasize that physical wellness through running, coaching. How do you integrate this aspect into the broader coaching philosophy? And why do you think that physical activity is vital for the mental and professional health?
Yeah. Well, like I was saying before, it is just a space for you to be present and in tune with your body. Like, what's really going on? How are you feeling? How can you find that edge and push yourself a little bit more? And how does that translate into, when you're getting ready to make like a big, scary career pivot and you're like, oh, this feels uncomfortable. And you're like, wow, I've been in this discomfort before, like whether it was on a run or in the gym or whatever that might be. So I think it's just like looking at those life parallels and those lessons and those moments when you learn about yourself. And I always say life on the run, like, it's you versus you. You get to choose that inner critic who's telling you can't, that you're not enough, that you're not going to get it to the finish line, whatever that might be. Or you can choose the version who's like, heck yeah, you got this, keep going, I'm so proud of you. And so I think there is so many life parallels. And then obviously also like the physical benefits when it comes to reducing stress and improving health and decreasing risk for chronic comorbidities. So it's definitely multi-level.
Do you believe that anybody can run?
Yes, I do. And I think it starts with redefining your perception of what running is. There are so many people who are like, I'm not a runner. And I'm like, come hang out in my world for 3 weeks. I got you.
What do you work on with those people that think that they can't run?
Mindset, and there's so many, I pride myself in, like, I feel like my coaching approach to running is much different than others because, like, I don't care how far, how fast, how long you can run if you are not hyping yourself up and supporting yourself from that perspective. And so, I am a big like biofeedback person. Let's talk about, your stress, your nutrition, do you see how it's all connected? It all
Mhm.
comes back together. But yeah, the mindset and, just rewriting those narratives. And a lot of times when people say like, I'm not a runner, it's like, what does running mean to you? Like, let's talk about this. Like, let's unpack this. And a lot of times it's this perception from social media or what we see other people doing or what we think a runner is. Yeah, I believe everybody can be a runner.
I love that. You believe that careers kind of evolve as the individual grow. Can you share maybe a personal experience where your own growth kind of led into that significant career shift? And I know you told us your story a little bit, but maybe a little bit more detail on that.
Yeah, and I think too, it's like I was actually just writing a podcast script about this the other day because I think it's insanity to think that you're going to be in the same career your whole life because you're not the same person your whole life. You're going to, grow and evolve, and your career is going to grow and evolve. And you might be in the exact same position, but it's probably going to look a little bit different. Your roles are like your role is going to look a little bit different. And I think too, like as humans, we crave growth and not to be stuck in the mundane. Like, I don't know anybody who's, well, there might be some people who are like, I like the same thing every single day, no matter what. Like my breakfast, lunch, dinner, my wake up time, my bedtime, my like, day to day tasks. It's just very uncommon, especially for nurses, I guess, to, crave that. But for me, when I think about the growth and evolution of my career and how I've been able to adapt, is definitely this season of life. I never would have imagined myself taking on leadership roles at work. I'm charge nurse now. I'm speaking on panels during nursing week. I'm, doing this unit-based wellness challenge. And me as a new grad nurse, she was just trying to survive. Like she was just trying to learn the basics. And so my career then versus my career now looks very different. And even though I'm in a similar environment, my day-to-day looks wildly different. I'm precepting new grads all the time or new hires. So I'm not just getting through the basics. So as you grow and evolve as a human, your likes, your desires, your interests, your dislikes are also going to change, and your career is going to reflect that.
What advice would you give to people that maybe are on that quote unquote stable career with with that good income, but they're kind of feeling that entrepreneurial pull? They're a little hesitant to make the leap because they're fearful. We don't know what we don't know. There's some potential instability in there. What kind of advice do you give to those people when it comes to what the next step should be?
I'm like thinking back to Mick 6, 8 months ago of like, what did she need to hear? And honestly, there's enough room at the table. I talk to a lot of nurses who have this desire to go and create something, but they're like, well, somebody else is already doing it. And it's like your perspective, your experiences, your skill set is going to be so wildly different from the person who's maybe doing something similar to what you think you want to do. And again, what you think you want to do to start off with is probably not going to be the thing that you end up doing in the long term. And so I think just having the courage and the bravery to go for it, invest in somebody to help support you in the process. I feel like that was the best thing I could have done, because it was like every time that fear came up or every time that not enoughness came up, which it will, it's like you're not going to get to bypass that. Having somebody in your corner to kind of bring you back to a place of neutrality so you can keep building and keep, getting curious and discovering what it is that you want to do. And I think too, there's this misconception with like entrepreneurship that once you start it, you have to be ready to dive into it full time. And that might not be your story. You get to do it your own way. And the way that you do it is going to look so different from the way that other people do it. And this is something that I've like really like reared heads with in the last 6 to 8 months, because I've had Strides for Strength for almost 2 years now. And I was still working full-time nursing while I was building that. And I have a co-founder, so she runs that with me. And once I decided that I wanted to start to introduce career coaching and working more with nurses in the one-on-one and group space, I was like, but people say like do one thing and one thing only and they'd be like really good at it. And I'm like, I just don't agree with that. Like my multi-passionate, fully expressed self cannot get behind that. And so once I blessed and released those expectations of what I heard other people doing or saw other people doing, I was like, it gets to be this good. It gets to be this fun. So there's no right way. There's no rule book. And you might work with a mentor who has some really great insight, and you can take what you want and you can leave behind what doesn't serve you and then make it your own. And I think that that's what's the most beautiful thing about it.
A lot of my transition from that stable, job in healthcare into the creative world was really sitting down and writing things down. Like, what are the fears that will keep me from taking that next step? Just be very concrete about it. Is it that I won't be able to pay my bills? I won't be able to contribute enough to stay in this house, and I won't have health care, and I won't do this, and I won't do that. And so what are those fears? Name them, write them down, and then make specific goals to work on those things to give you then the ability to make that change. So, I saved a year's worth of expenses before I quit my job. Because then, if I didn't book one session for the entire year, if I failed miserably and I was so bad, I would still have enough to pay for our bills for the entire year. And then I could go try to find a job again. So, once you make a plan, a concrete plan to address those things, then there is no more excuses to be given, right?
Definitely. One thing too with that is like defining what success means to you. Like, what does that look like? But more importantly, like, what does that feel like? And I remember back when I was, doing something very similar to what you just said, like, what are the barriers here? What is this going to look like? What do I want it to look like? How's it going to feel? And it was in a journal. I was actually just cleaning it out last night, and it was like a very vivid, detailed, like, how do I want my day to day to feel? Like, when I wake up in the morning, what do I want that to look like? And it's so fun. Like today, like I had that morning where I got to go for my run and I got to do my meditation and I got to just have this space for me. And so sometimes I think too, it's like tapping into that feeling of as if you're already that person. And then once it comes to fruition, you're like, dang, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm so glad you had in your journal that you were going to be a podcast guest on my
Yeah.
podcast so many years ago. I love that.
Yes.
Uh, so, as someone who, is on a mission to kind of shift the narrative around just the nursing and the burnout careers out there, what future initiatives do you have or projects that you're excited about in your
Oh man, all the things. This is where my multi-passionate self comes in. So I last year ran my first event called Virtual Nurse Career Day. It was a 2-day event. We really removed the sterility of, career days and career fairs, like plastic lined tables and like a big ballroom. And it was a really like intimate experience. We had a career panel, workshop hosts, movement, Reiki. It was such a beautiful experience. But this year I'm going to be doing it in person here in Denver. So I'm super excited for that. There'll still be like a virtual component option to it as well. But my mission is to get as many nurses in a room as possible to help them see other nurses who are living a life and a career that they love and that they're obsessed with and that is really in alignment with that career by design. And last year, I think my favorite part of the event was we had nurses who were still working bedside, nurse entrepreneurs, nurses who were working outpatient, or a combination of all of them. Some of them had kids, some of them didn't. And the nurses who came to the event, they were like, I had no idea there was that many things that I could do with my license. And I was like,
yeah.
Mission accomplished. So that's the big event of the year that will be happening actually the first week of November. So that is coming up quick.
Congratulations. That's exciting.
Thank you. Yes, I am super excited. But again, that CEO entrepreneurship mindset, I have never run an in-person event before, let alone for 3 days. So we're figuring it out.
I'm sure you're going to do great. Sounds like it's a great kind of concept that is definitely can elevate the idea of a career fair. So
Right. Yeah. I'm like, I don't need to talk to another HR recruiter who has never been in the place of work and who has another pen that sucks. Sorry.
yes. Exactly. Well, tell everybody where they can find you if they want to work with you and learn more about what you offer.
Yeah, for sure. I hang out mostly over on Instagram. My Instagram handle is at Michaela_Robertson_. And then you can come tune into the Built to Be You podcast wherever you tune into your podcast. And those are my two favorite platforms. So come connect with me there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michaela, for joining me today and just sharing a lot of these great strategies and concepts about how to continue to be excited and passionate about the career that you chose, but also understanding that if that's not where you belong anymore, that there is a new path for you out there
Yes.
with some structure and support. So thank you so much for your help.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. We'll see everyone else next week at the next episode of the Accidental CEO podcast. Bye. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Accidental CEO podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us in the world where creativity and business strategy collide. I am Nada Salvatore, thrilled to have shared this time with you. Remember, every episode is a step closer to mastering the art of being an accidental CEO. So don't miss out. Hit subscribe, drop us a sweet review, and spread the word to your creative tribe. Your next big breakthrough could be just one episode away. Join us next time for more insights, laughs, and actionable tips. Keep pushing boundaries, dreaming big, and embracing the beautiful chaos of entrepreneurship. Here's to make magic happen in your business and beyond.